All right, guys, welcome to example 4 of 9.3. Let's get started. We're going to find the limits of these sequences, and same thing, we're going to be writing them as limits. So A, the limit as n approaches infinity for 3n over n plus 1. Now, just like before, we were talking about how this is not top-heavy, it's not bottom-heavy, right? The exponent up here is n to the first and n to the first. I could ignore that one. Anything with a lower exponent or doesn't have a variable you can ignore as a constant. So really this is just 3n over n, right? Well, 3n over n just becomes 3, so that's just 3. And so that converges to 3. See, B, right, the limit as n approaches infinity for 5n squared over n cubed plus 1. Again, I can basically ignore this constant of a 1 because it's so insignificant, right? The n cubed dominates the value as n gets larger. And this is bottom heavy, which means that if you think about it, well, if I can ignore the 1, it's 5n squared over n cubed. Even though I'm multiplying that by 5, this is going to dwarf in comparison to that because, well, what's n squared over n cubed? That's just 1 over n or 5 over n, right? And in fact, let me write that down. So if we were to just ignore, right, that constant, this is the same thing as saying this, which then is the same thing as saying this. Which then, well, 5 divided by a billion is basically nothing. So this converges to 0. Now, again, if you just start from the first step and you just say, hey, you know what? It is bottom heavy. I know that as n cubed, goes to infinity, n squared is basically going to be like microscopic in comparison. And that's why it's going to be 0. But here's the logic behind it, if you want to follow that. Whoops. All right, part C. Limit as n approaches infinity for n cubed plus 2 over n squared plus n. So this is top heavy, and if it's top heavy, we know it's going to actually approach infinity. But again, I'll explain the logic with that if you've forgotten. If we were to simplify this, we can ignore this constant and we can ignore this n because we're only focusing on the highest exponents. Again, when n approaches such a large number, n squared will be so much bigger than this n value that we're going to just basically ignore it. So let's go ahead and focus only on the parts that make a difference. So this would be n cubed over n squared, right? And in that case, well, that's just going to be limit as n approaches infinity of just n. Well, that just means it's going to infinity, right? And so that diverges because it's not approaching a single value. And that's it.